Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational and regarding atheist and deconversion issues and any other issue related to those issues. Today I want to continue on our September 17th, 2023 edition of Sundays with a Rabyd Atheist. And this is our second week in the book of Job. And last time we talked about how Job, who was a righteous man, God basically decides to let Satan, take all his stuff, kill all his kids, destroy all his servants, minus the four messengers, of course, that bring Job the bad news. And basically God just allows Satan to sift him and take all of the things that he has, all to prove a point. And I made the remark at the end, I think, that makes God the bad guy in this story, because he has the power to stop all these bad things from happening to Job. But in fact, decides to let them happen to Job and even gives permission to the person that was going to do it. I don't know, it's kind of akin to a king who turns to one of his servants and says, I don't really trust the loyalty of this guy, even though he looks like he's really loyal. Burn down all his stuff, take all his stuff, kill all his kids, and let's see if he's, still loyal to you, sir. And so you send out the army to go do that, destroys a very loyal subject, destroys all his stuff, kills all his kids, takes all his servants, and walks away. And Job basically says, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord, is the classic line. And I don't know how to feel about Job at this point. It's almost like he's a trope character. He's written into the story more to illustrate somebody who is being tested by God in a very, unreasonable way, to put it mildly. And then somehow he's supposed to be, the example for the rest of us to follow, that, if God does this to you, then you are the one that you need to act like he did. You need to be the kind of person he is. No matter what happens, you worship God. No matter what happens, you accept what God is doing to you. And that's kind of the message of Job right out the gate, and it will stay the theme of Job through the rest of the book. Don't question anything. Even if you're totally innocent of something and you suffer all these bad things, don't question anything. Never question anything. Never question God. Never question anything about him. Okay? It's really the kind of propaganda that a dictator would love. Now, we have this pause. Job has, basically said, blessed be the name of the Lord. And we hit chapter 2. Chapter 2, if it's possible, God gets worse. Job is left with nothing but 4 servants who are probably going to quit because they're not going to get paid. He has his wife still, which we'll meet in a moment, and basically his health. Okay, all he has is his health, pretty much at this point, and a wife that is less than supportive, which we'll see in a moment. And 4 servants who probably gave him the news and handed in their resignations, because how's he going to pay them? So here we go. Once again, we're back in the throne room. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves to the Lord, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from roaming about the earth and walking around on it. The Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. And he still holds to his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without cause. Now I want to pause right there. Notice what God says. Because a lot of people say, well, Satan did the act. Satan is the one who did it. But that's not what God says. See, God says in this passage, and he still holds fast to his hand, although you incited me, God himself, against him. Okay, without cause. In other words, you're God is literally admitting, I'm the one that gave you the permission to do the stuff. So really, it is me that's been incited against Job. I'm the one who's the one that's saying, you can do this. So God is literally admitting his own blame in the story. He is literally saying, I am responsible for what happened. Okay, you may have pulled the trigger, but I'm the one who gave you the order to pull the trigger. Okay, I'm the one who gave you the permission to do it. I removed the protection and said, hey, go for it. Go do it. Okay? So I want to pause there and just remind everybody that God is literally, a lot of people try to get God off the hook of this, well, Satan's doing it. And I'm like, no, not according to this. God takes it. He's the sovereign one. He's the one sitting on the throne. Anything that happens in his kingdom is his responsibility. And he takes that responsibility in the story. Okay? Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man will give for his life. However, put forth your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh. He will curse you to your face. Now notice what Satan's asking. He's asking for God to touch his bone and his flesh. Okay, not that Satan wants to do this. Satan can do apparently the fire out of the sky to destroy this and incite people to go kill people and cause the wind to collapse and kill children. But this is where he's actually literally asking God to touch Job's health. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your power, only spare his life. Well, that's small comfort, isn't it? Then Satan went out of the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot to the crowns of his head. And he took a potsherd to scrape himself while he was sitting among the ashes. Oh boy. Boils are literally one of the most painful things because if you put pressure on them, I've had one, okay, in my life, and it was more due to an injury than anything else, but it basically a blister type boil resulted from that. And when you put pressure on a boil like that, it hurts. And he's got these things all over his body, so he literally cannot sit or move or lay down without being in pain the entire time. And he's scraping these boils, basically busting them open so they don't hurt. So you got to imagine a guy with basically these blister boils all over his body that he's cut open to let them leak out so they don't hurt when he leans against them. This guy's got to look like a mess. Okay, the picture that's painted here in the literature is Job completely miserable. Okay, he is completely, utterly miserable. He's shaved his head. He's cutting open these boils. He's trying to keep, some of his integrity. He won't curse God. He won't do any of that. And we all need to remember that this is all because God gave permission and he even took responsibility for the decisions earlier. So he's going to be responsible for this one too. Now we need to go back and remember what all this is about. That Satan's just saying, yeah, I don't think he's that loyal. Hey, why don't you take all this stuff? And then when you do take all this stuff, he comes back and says, hey, God, you took all this stuff, but man, take his health, take his life, touch him personally, and he'll curse you to your face. Okay, I don't think he's all that loyal. And so God allows Satan to give boils to poor Job, and Job is still sitting there scraping all these boils, scraping all this stuff. He's shaved head. He's sitting in the ashes of his former life. I can sit here seeing him just sitting in the ashes of where his family was, and he's just looking around him, and he's got nothing but ashes. It's just him and his wife. And then she adds into the misery. Look at what she says. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speak. Shall we indeed accept good from God and not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. I have issue with Job. I'm sorry I do. He's going to do something that I would have done right away. Why? Why is it so bad to ask God why? He never really seems to have an answer for that question, does he? I mean, if I look at this passage now, it's like, Job, you're being a simp. You're being an absolutely piece of crap person because you're literally like lockstep with this God who doesn't seem to really give a shit about you as a person. Okay, he doesn't care. Okay, and he's demonstrated. It's funny that Job is loyal to God, but how loyal is God to Job? Okay, it's like we never really asked that question, and I started asking that question after I became an atheist and I read this story for the first time because I was getting ready to preach while I was still in the pulpit trying to preach, and I'm reading Job and I'm like, oh my God, I can't preach this. I cannot preach it because it's going to come out. It's going to come out what I think about God here. Because in my opinion in this story at this point, God is one of the worst human beings as far as loyalty to somebody that you can possibly have. He is absolutely not loyal to Job, even though Job has been completely loyal to him. And even though Job goes through all this crap, he's still loyal to God. His own wife says, curse God and die. Curse God and die. We'll get what happens to her later, which is always an interesting part of the story. Because there's a message to Job to the people that read it at the time. And the message is, Job is the righteous one. Job is the good guy here, okay? He's the righteous one. And God is a complete dick, okay? And what the message is at this point is exactly what Job says. We accept good from God. Why can't we accept evil? You speak as a foolish woman and she's like, curse God and die. It's like, why don't you do this? Why don't you give up? And, maybe there's a testimony of human endurance, I suppose, but we're not going to get any testimony about human endurance, are we? We're going to get a testimony of a God who literally, to prove a point to one of his angels, Satan, okay, literally to prove a point to that guy, literally destroys a man's life on a bet. Okay? I'm sorry, I'm still trying to find the good guy here. Job's kind of a simpleton, in my opinion. God's the bad guy. Satan's like, once we get done here, look at what Satan does. Oh, man, God, you turned out to be right. Good job, God. See you later, bro. And you never see Satan, I don't think, in the story ever again. He comes in, he makes a couple accusations against Job. God takes them seriously and literally lets Satan beat the living shit out of Job. Okay, take all his stuff, take all his children, reduce his health to rubble, give him one of the most painful diseases you can possibly have, put him in absolute pain and misery, have his wife basically turn her back on her own husband, and there he sits, totally flipping miserable. And then, of course, he's going to have a few friends, just a few friends show up. Hold on, it gets better. Now, when Job's three friends heard of all the adversity that had been done upon him, they came, each one from his own place. Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad, the Shudite, and Zophar, the Naamanite. And they made their appointment together to come to sympathize with him and comfort him. When they lifted up their eyes at a distance and did not recognize him, they raised their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe, and they threw dust over their heads toward the sky. Then they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, with no one speaking a word to him, for they saw his pain was very great. No shit. I'm going to be honest. I have a lot of easier time reading the Bible than I used to like 5 years ago when I was first deconverting. And I can now read it. But now I look at it with a whole new set of eyes, with my eyes opened. And it's like you're setting the stage to tell people that no matter what happens, don't question God, don't question your authorities, don't question anything. The only thing you should do is accept your lot in life and don't question it. Now, I'm a Stoic, okay, in philosophy. But Stoicism gets a bad rap as being, you just accept suffering. You look for suffering. You don't look for suffering. You just understand that it's going to happen. And take God out of this story, and you have a guy that suffers a whole lot of stuff. And, he could handle this like a Stoic, okay, what can I do about the situation? But he doesn't do anything because he views this as God doing something to him and he shouldn't question it, so he should just accept it. That's not Stoicism, that's stupidity. Okay, Stoicism, for instance, for me, if I was in this situation, I'd be like, okay, what do I got left and what can I do about it? Well, I need to sit here and maybe get this disease over with and get myself healed up, get my health back, and look around and see what I can do. Okay, but I got to get my health back. And, taking God out of the equation, he actually has some options. But with God in the equation, we have this disloyal God who basically turns his back on one of his most loyal servants and stabs him in the back. And then that servant isn't supposed to question that God. God is worse in the story at this point because here's the thing. He allows Satan to attack his health. There are so many things worse than death. And this guy literally is experiencing all the things that are worse than death all at once. I mean, if you put all this, he's in a situation now where he's experienced life in such a way that he's not going to curse God and die because his wife wouldn't say that, but he's wishing that something would run him over, like an elephant from Africa would just run his ass over and kill him and end it. Because God has put him in a position that, in my opinion, is even worse than death. He's sore hired, doesn't have any resources. He's had everything taken away from him. His own wife doesn't even want to be with him. And now he's got 3 friends who come up and they just weep. And they sit down and they sit around for 7 days and don't say a flipping word. They don't do anything. Okay? They don't offer him comfort. They don't offer him stuff. They don't, it's like, there's nothing here. Because nobody wants to challenge what God is doing to this guy. Okay? They don't want to challenge what God is doing. And it's funny to me because there's an old expression about people in power. You always have to beware of people in power when they make decisions in which they incur no risk to themselves. And God is the ultimate person that makes all these decisions that affect people's lives, negatively and positively, who incurs really no risk to himself, does he? Okay, he is the ultimate guy that incurs no risk to himself, so he can put you through anything he wants to and get away with it because there's no risk for himself. Let's say Job had failed the test. What risk did God take in him failing? He looked over at Satan and said, you know what, thanks a lot, Satan. You told me this guy was disloyal, and now I know for sure he's disloyal. I win. God doesn't lose in this scenario because of everybody's attitude about it. If Job turns out to be loyal, God turns out to be right. If Job turns out to be disloyal, thank you, Satan, for being a good servant because you showed how, you showed somebody that was really not all that loyal. They were just loyal because I was giving them stuff and keeping them safe. And it's like, either way, God wins. He has no risk to himself. And this just puts any person that's in power. If you had a king like this, they're going to be a flipping tyrant. They're going to do anything they want. And they just expect loyalty without giving any loyalty in return. I'm sorry, God in this story is a disloyal cunt. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it with you. This guy's a jerk. You have a guy who's literally totally into God, doesn't sin according to the text, is blameless and upright according to everything he does. He literally sacrifices 12 sacrifices every week just to make sure everybody's covered with their sins. And how does God reward that loyalty? That demonstrated loyalty? Well, let's test him once. Let's see what he's really got. I'm going to let Satan take his stuff. I'm going to let Satan kill his kids. I'm going to let Satan destroy his health. And then we'll see if he's really loyal. Does this not sound like a mob boss to you? Who just suddenly turns on one of his henchmen and takes all his crap, even though the henchman's never shown any disloyalty, whatever? It really sounds like that to me. The more I read this story, and I've been reading ahead because I'm preparing for this, because we're going to get into the part where, God, his 3 friends start to try to comfort Job, and we're going to have this long dialogue. I'm not going to cover every bit of that dialogue. What I'm going to do is summarize it. I'll break it down into parts and summarize what happened in each part, but the real problem here is the characters. Satan is kind of a bit player. He just comes in and drops a few accusations. Hey, boss, I don't think this guy's that loyal. Take away his stuff and then take away his health and see what he does. Then you'll really know if he's loyal or not. If he sticks with you after you like totally destroy him and show complete disloyalty to the guy, if he's still loyal to you, then you know you have an absolute servant. No, you don't have just an absolute servant. You have an absolute putz. You have an absolute guy with no spine, okay, when it comes to you, okay? And God does as he says, and you want to paint God as a good guy. He's not the good guy. The bad guy gets worse. He is totally disloyal to Job, and Job just takes it. And that's what the sad part of the story is to me, is that this God, who Job has shown nothing but loyalty to, turns his back on Job and basically is completely disloyal to him, and we're supposed to accept it. I'm sorry, God gets worse. He gets even worse because of that action. He incurs no risk to himself. He's a complete jerk, and he shows no loyalty to Job, who's done nothing but show loyalty to him. I don't know. I mean, you can keep this God. I don't want him. He's kind of an asshole. There are better gods out there in other pantheons that'll treat you better than this one. So there you go. All right, well, that's the edition of this type of Job. I don't know how many chapters I'll hit next week. I'm going to read ahead, and I don't know. I'm probably looking at the overall tenor of all these guys' arguments of why they try to defend God and go after Job, and Job keeps coming back. I don't think that I did anything. Okay, I just want God to tell me why. Okay, and boy, how dare he ask that question, right? We're going to see that at the end, but basically that's it. So at this point, we have Job covered with boils that he scraped open so they don't hurt. He's surrounded by friends. He's probably got infections all over his body. He's been sitting there for 7 days. He's in great pain. His wife's turned her back on him. And his 3 friends gather around him and don't even offer him a word of comfort or anything. Nothing. Because they can see Job's in real distress. Nice guys. Nice guys. God has even put the best kind of friends in Job's path. We're going to see that as we look at it. But that's it for today. Yeah, I can't really do this stuff very often. Glad it's only once a week. All right, just a few other things. My video, what is an atheist, did pretty good a couple days ago. And I think it's testimony to the fact that there's a lot of questions about what an atheist is, and I think too many Christians accept what they've heard from Christian philosophers and Christian this and Christian that instead of talking to atheists themselves. Okay, and that's usually where the thing comes from. Let's see. What I didn't look up before I got started recording was who's winning the poll. And last it was the ontological argument was winning. And so that will probably be it if it's still the case. Yeah, let's see. Yep, ontological argument with 43% of the votes. That's where we're going to go. So that's where we're going to be. Come this week, the ontological argument. Friday, I'm going to get back to my deconversion story where I'm going to talk about the hardest 2 years of my life after my father's death while trying to get into the ministry and how that affected me long term and some insights I have into that. I'm thinking about this, so there might be a bonus video sometime this week where I drop one. Matt Dillahunty addressed one of the conventions recently, like a couple weeks ago. He did it via giving them a videotape because his health isn't the greatest right now. And he said a couple things and inquired a couple things in this, and I thought to myself I'd like to respond. I may do a 2-part response. Basically talking about how secularism can give people better hope than religion, and then the other part of what secular organizations can do to be more effective. I think I'm going to put my political science cap and my understanding of group dynamics to at work on that one and see if I can come up with it. I'm still thinking about it when those videos drop, but there'll be bonus videos that'll drop at some point, maybe this week or next. So just keep that in mind. Thank you for stopping by. It's been Sundays with the Rabyd Atheist for September 17, 2023, where I've been talking about Job. We got through Job chapter 2, thankfully. I know everybody's anxious to get the end of the story, but I think parts of the dialogue have some interesting things between Job's three friends and Job are very interesting, so I do want to point them out. But we'll get to that next week. Thank you all for stopping by. I appreciate every single one of you. We're getting very close to 1,000 subscribers, so keep it up. Keep sharing with your friends. I've got a couple interviews in the works with other channels, so I'll keep you abreast on those when they come up. Right now they're kind of in the very early planning stages, so I'm not going to give dates or anything like that until they actually happen. So, but I've been asked to appear on a few shows, and I'm trying to find ones that I can do that fit into my time frame. So, and with people I trust as well. So, and I'm not quite trusting, I guess, of certain things like Christians that want to interview me. I always feel set up. I've done that once before, and I felt set up. So, a little gun shy of that. So, sorry for anybody that's asked me in recent days to interview me that's coming at it from a Christian perspective. It's not you. It's just past experience. And there's others I feel more comfortable with. So, that'll be coming up. The channel continues to grow. Very close to having memberships and super chat and all that stuff if we get enough watch hours. So that's where we're at. Thank you once again for stopping by. I appreciate every one of you once again. This has been a great ride so far with this channel, and I thank each one of you. Thanks for stopping by and giving me a listen, and I'll catch you next time.